Good afternoon and welcome to Cold Chain Insights, the podcast that focuses everything temperature controlled logistics for the pharmaceutical industry. My name's Thomas Hunt, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Jenifer Arellano, who's logistics manager for Direct Relief. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Pleasure. It's great to have you on. I think a really nice place to start is you've had a sort of long and quite varied career. And if you could run us through maybe your last few roles and then obviously your current position there at Direct Relief and the sort of work that you're doing there.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm currently the logistics manager at Direct Relief. And for any of you who aren't familiar with who Direct Relief is, we're a humanitarian nonprofit located in Santa Barbara, California. And we provide medical supplies and pharmaceuticals free of charge, both within the United States and to over 70 countries internationally. So I am on our logistics team here in our Santa Barbara office. I've actually spent my entire career here at Direct Relief. I came here straight after undergrad. I graduated with a degree in supply chain and operations management. And really, I found supply chain in college and I loved it. I said, this is what I want to do. And I always wanted to work in the nonprofit space. I just didn't know exactly how that would manifest itself. And so when I found supply chain, I was like, I wonder if this could be somewhere where I could fit. I wonder if there is a space for someone in logistics to work in humanitarian spaces. And I found Direct Relief and really have grown from a very entry level position here almost 9 years ago up through the ranks to logistics specialist, senior logistics specialist, where I worked really closely with our cold chain team and now onto logistics manager. And our team has been growing the past couple of years. We just keep adding more and more people to the team as we're doing more and more work around the world.
Yeah. Okay. And can you just give us a sense of Direct Relief in terms of the size of the organisation you are now and a bit of detail of where you sort of ship to and what sort of work you do in terms of that area?
Yeah, definitely. So Direct Relief employee wise, we are about 150 employees, the majority of which sit here at our Santa Barbara office. We do have a couple offices internationally. We have a logistics team in the Netherlands where we have a 3PL there. We have a team in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, and then some remote team members scattered internationally. We ship about $2 billion worth of goods per year internationally and within the US. And we're the fifth largest nonprofit in the US.
Yeah, it's impressive organisations. And I did sort of see that Direct Relief, as you say, has grown in cold chain shipments, the volume by around 35% in just the last 2 years, which is incredibly impressive. And what does that kind of growth actually mean operationally, internally for you on the ground? And what were the sort of changes you had to make in order to sort of do that ramp up and keep up with that sort of growth?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. I really have seen the growth in cold chain, especially since we moved into the building that I'm currently sitting in 2018. We built this building. We were originally a quarter mile down the road in a much smaller, older facility, and we did a capital campaign to raise funds to build this incredibly beautiful building that I'm sitting in with our own large 10,000 pallet space warehouse with its own cold room. And within a couple of years of moving in, COVID hit. And we saw an increase in the amount of cold chain vaccines and medicines that were coming onto the market. And we immediately found the need to build a second cold room. So practically, that was a huge change. So moving into this building in 2018, we had I believe it's like a 3,200 square foot cold room. And then we built one almost the double the size in the back of our warehouse to be able to accommodate more cold chain materials, understanding that the more pharmaceuticals that are coming onto the market, a lot of them require 2 to 8 or frozen capabilities. So the majority of when we talk about cold chain here at Direct Relief, we're talking about 2 to 8 Celsius medications for the most part. I mean, that's a big practical change, right? Making an infrastructure change to your building to accommodate more and more of those types of materials. When you are shipping to people on the ground, you want to make sure that they have the infrastructure in place to receive the medications and be able to store them. So, we go through all this work to make sure that we are storing our medications to the specs that are required. We're using packaging and temperature monitoring and, doing all of this work on the front end to get the shipments where they need to go. But you really need to understand that the people on the ground have the infrastructure to store and handle it
Mm.
well themselves. So one of the projects that our team has been working on with several of our other programs teams here is increasing the capacity of the infrastructure at destination. So providing refrigerators and refrigeration solutions and cold rooms and sometimes solar powered cold rooms and refrigerators, depending on where the consignee is located. So making sure that when we're increasing how much we want to send, we have to make sure that the people on the receiving end have the capacity to receive more product so they can treat more patients and we can ultimately, provide medicine to more people who need it.
Yeah, and how do you even start going about that? That's quite obviously in humanitarian supply chains, it is quite unique in terms of challenges you guys are facing because you're dealing with areas where there's little or no infrastructure sometimes, so you haven't got visibility on the type of infrastructure that might be available when the product hits. So in terms of creating that infrastructure at the destination, how do you go about doing that? And what is the process in terms of picking the right partner to do that with?
Yeah, so our programs team they maintain the relationships with our partners and our consignees on the ground. And so when we're looking at a project like this, like pick a region, Africa, say, and you want to see where you can provide more infrastructure. We look at our partners that we are currently shipping to that
Mhm.
have been receiving products from us. We have great relationships with, and we go to them and say, what do you need? The people on the ground, they know what they need more than we do. So we really rely on our partners to tell us how we can provide what they need. So this can look like us providing a couple of options. We have vetted with different vendors, different types of refrigeration options and solutions, solar versus just plug-in units. Is a cold room appropriate for the volume of product that we're looking at sending over the next 5-10 years? And really starting that conversation. So we look at partnerships that we have been growing and maintaining and working over the past decade or two, or sometimes even longer, and really listening to the people, our partners on the ground. We trust them and we know that they are the ones who they know what they need. And we're just here to kind of facilitate.
The process, yeah, it's fascinating. So, and my other question was in terms of building out a cold room capability from say 3,200 square feet, I think you mentioned there, to doubling it. What are the challenges you did face during that process? Obviously, we have a factory ourselves, and often it's space, which is a key one, but then personnel to deliver the project. And I think you've obviously done that in a very quick time in terms of turning that project round. Were there learnings out of that you could share or interesting things that you found during that process?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I've learned personally during this period of kind of rapid growth is the importance of training. So, making sure that your team and anyone you bring on is really trained well and that anyone on your team has the capability to train another person. So, our team, we're looking at work instructions and we're reviewing our processes constantly. We review our work instructions about twice a year, and there usually happens as we're reviewing, that's actually, we need to change that. This has been updated. We've, improved the way we do this since 6 months ago. So, especially when a lot of change is happening, making sure that everyone's on the same page, you're retraining and training. And then in our warehouse operations, cross training has been really important because the workload when it comes to cold chain can vary from day to day. Earlier in the week, we have a lot more orders going out, especially domestically. We're not going to ship domestic orders on a Friday because most of the clinics that we ship to are closed Saturday, Sunday. So early in the week, you're really, really busy, have a lot of people that you need. And then later in the week, it's maybe less busy or less work to do. So ensuring that our international operations outbound team is also cross trained and able to jump in on the cold chain side when they're able to, when it's needed, is really one of the ways we've approached that. So instead of just hiring a ton more people, we cross train and then people can float around where they need to.
Yeah, nice. Okay, very good. And I saw you presented the Ukraine case study at Pharma in Boston 2023. We were also there. And what are the specific challenges in terms of delivering into a conflict zone? Because that's obviously something. I suppose there could be something more challenging than that. And what did it really teach you in terms of having to go through that?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway for me for that presentation was just the benefits of real-time monitoring, both location and temperature, really being able to see exactly where your shipment is at any moment in time, especially when delivering into an active conflict zone. So one of the unique things with Ukraine that we found compared to other conflicts that we've delivered into in the past, maybe because we've just been delivering so much into Ukraine for the past several years, is that the route that the driver can take may need to change at a moment's notice. And we may not be aware because if a road is blocked or if there's bombing happening in a region and the driver needs to divert, That's something that, we can see on our real-time monitoring, on our tracking. We can see where the driver is going.
Mhm.
Another thing that is really, really important is communication. So communication between us and our freight forwarders that we're using, but then also the freight forwarders and our drivers, and then the drivers and the final consignee. So one of the things we found early on in the conflict was sometimes a driver would be on their way to a warehouse and all of a sudden, something would happen and the end destination needed to be changed.
Mhm.
So the warehouse where they were supposed to deliver is no longer safe to get to. And so then it's a lot of communication between the consignee, the driver, our freight forwarder, and direct relief to make sure that the medicine is still going to a warehouse that we are aware of and are okay with it going. We have licensing for it, that sort of thing. But then, making sure that the driver is not in harm's way and the product is getting where it needs to go and there are people there to receive it. So really, really communication was a huge thing there. But yeah, real-time temperature monitoring and real-time tracking is being able to make sure that your shipment is going where it needs to go and that it ultimately gets there was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, wow. And so in terms of that, if a product's en route and it's en route and being monitored in real time and you see it's a diversion for whatever reason, is temperature the main concern at that point, or is it the possible different destination that product's being sent to and then the capabilities of the infrastructure in that destination to hold that product? What are you trying to manage? What are the priorities on your list there?
Yeah, so our priorities are kind of both the temperature of the product and route, and then also making sure it's delivered to the right location. So we have a team here in the US, obviously, but we also have contacts in Poland, our Ukraine team. So they are
Mhm.
the ones working with our Ukrainian consignees. And it's nice because they are on the same time zone. So even when we're asleep, they can be tracking the shipment and are really in contact with both the freight forwarders in Poland and our consignees in Ukraine to kind of bridge that gap. So we kind of have the communication covered almost 24 hours between us here in our US office and then our colleagues in the EU.
How much, when this happens, which sounds like a incredibly difficult thing to manage, how often is it turned into a real issue in terms of product wastage, for example, versus actually you can salvage things using the technology?
Yeah, we do not have very many examples where shipment needs to be diverted en route, thankfully. It's only happened a couple of times and was closer to the earlier in the war, which is one of the things I believe I spoke about in 2023. We don't see it happen very often, which is a good thing. But we do really use the real-time temperature monitoring to salvage products quite often. Usually it's happening when the temperature of the truck is not set correctly,
Mhm.
or if, for example, a shipment was not stored correctly at an airport en route. So either if it was not placed into cold storage, the shipment has gotten closer to 8 Celsius than we'd be comfortable with, we might tell the driver to set the truck a little colder to try to bring the temperature back down to that 5 Celsius range. Or if, for example, it's winter and your shipment was in Poland, it had a little more tarmac time than you were anticipating and has gotten closer to that 2 Celsius range, we might instruct the driver to set the temperature closer to 8 to try to bring up the internal product temperature during that route into Ukraine, which can take a day or two. So really that communication with the driver is super key for us. And that the real-time temperature monitoring really allows us to, especially when we have a dedicated truck, you can tailor the experience the shipment is having, right? Like you can tailor your
Yeah.
temperature as needed.
Yeah, yeah, playing around with the PCM phase points and et cetera, yeah, so,
Mhm.
yeah, interesting. So let me just move on to Smart CAE. It's a company I know well. We use it within our own business, and I know you had a case study around, Dhaka airport where there was a fire in the cold room, which was unexpectedly hit, and I can't imagine how you quite dealt with that, but can you talk us through what happens, when that sort of disaster came over your desk and how you managed it? I think using digital twins or something during that real-time process?
Yes, definitely. So when that fire happened in Dhaka, I believe it was last October, we had anticipated that there would be cold storage at destination when we were sending that shipment. So all of a sudden a fire happens, the cold room is no longer functional. You don't have that flexibility at destination for clearance to take a couple of days if something happens. Now when the shipment arrives, it needs to clear and it needs to be delivered right away. So one of the things that we use is a platform called Smart CAE, and they tout digital twins. So being able to take your shipment in your packaging and run it through a digital lane to simulate the internal temperature of your product throughout transit. So the benefits of this are that you don't actually have to put any product at risk to test out a lane. So in this example, we have a shipment that's ready and we are want to know how much time do we have at destination to get this cleared and delivered before we could expect a temperature excursion. So we take our packaging, we build the lane, we know the Smart CA utilizes historical temperature data. So we can look at, okay, let's look at the hottest and the coldest temperatures at these airports along this destination for the past 10 years. We'll take the hottest and the coldest, we'll run our box through the lane. Basically, we look at the worst case scenario, right? The hottest
Mm.
temperatures we could expect to see, the coldest we could expect to see if it's winter. And then it will give us a simulation of what can we expect to see? How long does the shipment actually have before we could expect a temperature excursion at destination? And this allows us to communicate to the agent we're working with on the ground. I believe this was a DDP shipment. So we have an agent on the ground that we are communicating with and we can tell them you have this much time, you know? So that is one of the benefits of using Smart CE, and it's why we use it for our international shipments. And so for this shipment we could take our large softbox packaging and load it into the system. It gave us that set amount of time at destination that we had. We were able to communicate it to our agent, and then that gives the expectation, right? So
Yeah.
we have an expectation that this shipment is going to be cleared and delivered within X amount of hours, and then you have something to work up against. And then our consignee is also there ready to unpack and place the product into refrigeration immediately once it's arrived, send us the temperature data, and we can confirm that the product's safe to dispense right away.
Yeah, nice. And there's during your validation process for new packaging, how much do you rely on, say, a simulations like Smart CA versus real life testing? What's your process for bringing in new packaging and sort of being happy?
Yeah, so we rely both on chamber testing that the manufacturer does, and then we also do some in-house testing where we will kind of simulate one of our lanes in our warehouse by, placing a shipment outside in the
Right. Okay.
sun and putting it in the cold room.
So it's quite a physical process you're doing there. It's quite hands on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when we just start looking at a new packaging, that's one of the first things we do is, okay, you have chamber testing, you have this validation process. We want to see how it actually works when our team is
Mm.
packing it out and when we're, handling the shipment. So we'll put some dummy product in there, some dunnage, and then kind of see what happens. We do rely on Smart CAE, especially for our domestic lanes, to run the validation process. We have a couple of different lanes we run using Smart CAE for our domestic validation. Internationally, we're basically validating the lane every time. We don't have regular lanes. We're not shipping to the same consignees every month, the same size of shipment, the same product. It really varies. So
Mm.
I couldn't tell you 2 weeks from now which countries we'll be shipping to. We don't know who's going to get the green light and their import permit now or 3 weeks from now or 6 weeks from now. So we really rely on being able to use this platform to.
Assurance that the lane's going to be the product's fit for purpose. I presume the packaging you're using is fit for purpose for the lane.
Yes, exactly. So we use SmartSea as kind of our final check before a shipment goes out the door. We have our final flight details, we have our final packaging selected, and within a couple days of it departing, we're going to run the lane to make sure that there aren't any red flags that pop up. We haven't missed anything as we were booking the shipment, and really making sure that it's our final check before it goes out the door to make sure that there's nothing else we could do to make this a more reliable lane.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I've heard people using it twofold, and you using it at the back end of the process, which is quite interesting. And a lot of people are using it as a first sight. So, okay, what give us a first look at this quickly and give us multiple different options in terms of, as you're right, the profiles you want to run through it, and then it's a quick process to get you to stage two where you're going into sort of chamber testing potentially, or really going into live testing like you're doing is by far the best. And I suppose many people don't do that. So it's good to hear that you're following that approach, because it's certainly the most effective one, I think, for testing packaging. Putting it in your cold storage and then just getting it outside will
Yeah,
tell you everything
definitely.
you need to see. So interesting, yeah. I also saw that you've been switching more to water-based PCMs in your packaging and more, and obviously you use standard phase change as well. What was the reason for that, or what was the sort of benefits you've seen?
Since I've been at Direct Relief, we have used water-based gels and water-based packaging. It was something that And then in the past couple of years, we really have noticed the benefits of utilizing PCM, especially on some of our more challenging lanes. So we do use a custom pack out for our water-based gels, which can be very reliable and very useful and a very cost-effective option for lanes that are reliable. So where you have cold storage at origin, layover, destination, very solid lane, reliable carriers, you have cold storage along the entire route, so you don't need to over engineer your packaging, right? Like a water-based solution will do what it needs to do.
Mhm.
However, when we think about some of these more complicated lanes where especially if there's no cold storage at destination, some destinations you can't fly to. So, or the quantities that we're shipping are so large that, and the planes are so small, sometimes we'll do what we call an air to ocean transport, where we're shipping air freight to a port and then getting it loaded into an ocean container and then moving that ocean container to the final destination. That is a risky lane, right? That is
Mhm.
not something that everyone is doing. You wouldn't do it unless you absolutely had to. And when we're looking at a lane like that, you really want to use robust packaging that's going to provide the most protection for your product. So as we've started using PCM for more of these complicated lanes, we've just realized the benefits. You don't see freeze shock.
Mm.
We see a longer validation time, a longer time frame that a shipment can maintain that 2 to 8 Celsius range. The benefit of PCM is when, even if it has utilized it has started getting warm in transit, as soon as you put it back into cold storage, it kind of recharges those gels again and, kind of start from the beginning with your validation time.
Mhm.
So we've really seen that as a benefit, and it comes with a cost, right? It comes with a higher price tag. But when you're shipping donated medicines, where it's not like we can just make more of them, there's a finite amount of resources, and the patients at the other end truly need them. So we will, foot that bill to make sure that the product gets to where it needs to go and and maintains the temperature it needs to.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good. And obviously, you're describing in terms of everything we've just talked about, this and the other things that you're taking a really individual approach to each lane, individual approach to your testing, and then obviously the pack out. The pack out is so important, isn't it, in terms of looking at each lane individually and saying, do we need water or PCM here? Do we need a VIP panel versus polyurethane? Do we need a
Mhm.
thermal cover? Do we need a thermal cover with PCM? There's so many options to do that, and you do need a kind of expert in the room to be able to sort of sift through those options, and because it can have a massive impact, I presume, on the weight of your shipment, the payload of what you're able to deliver onto a single load, price points,
Mhm.
etc. There's a huge amount in there in terms of just the general packaging spec that is, I presume, quite challenging on a day-to-day basis to get it right.
Yeah, it's definitely a cross-functional, yeah, it's teamwork. Our logistics team works really closely with our cold chain operations team in the warehouse. And when a large order comes down the pipeline, we'll just get together, Our cold chain lead will come stop by our logistics pod and say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. What are our options? Are we looking at narrow body flights where we're going to have to use a smaller pallet size? Could we look at shipping this via ocean? For
Mhm,
example, El Salvador is somewhere where we've recently been shipping a lot of their cold chain materials via ocean. The transit time from LA is only 3 weeks. So you're not sacrificing much transit time. And you can ship a lot of product in a 20 or 40-foot container for
mm,
a lot less money than shipping via air freight. So it's kind of, we really work together and maintain the open lines of communication between our teams. Anyone in the organization is able to say, "Hey, I am not comfortable with this. Can we take a step back, look at this again? What are our options?" So really anyone working on a shipment has the right and the ability to say, "Let's take a pause. Let's think about all of this again. Are there any concerns about this? Should we be thinking about this a different way?" Which really gives you the agency to feel good about what you're doing and how you're proceeding, especially when it comes to a riskier lane.
yeah, yeah, and I think there's just the customers that we talk to, there's just such huge wins for them across the board in terms of sustainability or commercially, in just looking at things slightly differently and being clever with how they use their packaging when it meets individual lanes. I think there's a lot there to go for, so it's quite an interesting part to take on. I just wanted to touch on the sustainability piece as well, and obviously it's a mainstay for most conversations in the sector at the moment. How does Direct Relief approach reusable packaging at the moment? Is it something that you're into? Because obviously there's always the cost restrictions and other things that you're dealing with in terms of it being a charity.
Definitely. So we are using reusable packaging on some of our domestic lanes. So we have a program called the replenishment program where the same US clinics are receiving the same medications every month. So for example, think about you have a prescription and you're going into your pharmacy once a month to pick up your prescription. So we have this program. It's a produce to give program where the manufacturers are donating product, the same quantities of product every month to support these patients in this program. So these partners are receiving cold chain products from us very regularly. So they are the first ones we started using and piloting this reusable cold chain program with. And so we partner with FedEx Return Services. So when we pack a shipment for someone's monthly replenishment shipment, we are attaching a FedEx label, and then inside we are also attaching a return FedEx label. So our shipment gets sent out, delivered next day. The partner receives it, they unpack their product, they see the return label on the inside. They just attach it to the top of the box, put all your gels back in, tape it up, and then automatically FedEx knows they're the ones who delivered. They know that it
Yeah.
got delivered, so they automatically schedule a pickup for the following day. So it's really not a lot of work for our partners on the ground. They actually, the ones who are using this, they prefer receiving reusable packaging.
Mm.
Single-use packaging is incredibly bulky, and especially if someone a small clinic is receiving 5 or 6 shippers, cold chain shippers, that is a lot of styrofoam and a lot of
Yeah,
gels to
100%.
try to
Yeah.
fit into your garbage. We had partners come to us and say, "We've just filled our entire dumpster with
Yeah.
cold chain packaging, like, we don't have anywhere to put all of this." So switching to a reusable, obviously it's beneficial for the environment. It feels good to not have to throw away so much of that styrofoam and, the gel, but it's beneficial for our partners. They don't have to deal with trying to dispose of the packaging. And then for us as well, it's an incredible cost saver to be able to reuse the same boxes
Mm.
over and over and over for 5 years. It's just a real benefit. So we started out slow, started out with a couple key partners. You run into your initial hitches in the system where someone throws away a couple of boxes and you kind of have a little heart attack because they're really expensive. But then
Mm.
you learn, okay, here's how to better communicate. This is what needs to happen. So the past several years, we've been growing and growing this program. I believe we're shipping reusable packaging to over 60 partners within the US, which is
Phenomenal.
really, yeah, it's been incredible to see.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then, so are you reusing the entire box? Are you taking out elements of the box, like the gel packs, and repurposing those? What's the process? And are you physically taking them back internally yourself and reusing them, or does the partner take them back, repurpose, and then rent them back to you? What's the model?
The model is currently we are having them shipped directly back to our warehouse. So we have added a custom box to the outside that the shipper just drops down into. So it's a
Oh.
custom orange direct relief box. It has, store at 2 to 8, do not discard this box, refrigerate upon opening, all those sorts of labels on the package. So it's really obvious when the partner receives it. This is a reusable box. Some of our partners, they're receiving shipments that have reusable packaging and some that don't. So it
Mhm.
really makes it clear to them, this is something you have to do something with. And then it does come, the reusable boxes do come back to our warehouse. And then our cold chain team is the one cleaning them. We throw away that outer box so that cardboard, it's just single use. It gets beat up in transit, but it
Yeah.
actually protects the packaging pretty well. So each reusable package box will get its own.
Amazing, yeah. I haven't heard of that being done before, but it's so obvious. And so the outer shell, as it were, has been used just for protection and labeling, and I presume that's made from a recyclable cardboard style
Yeah.
outer that you're just throwing in back into sort of probably curbside recycling, and then you're and in terms of the boxes, when you do get them back in real time, because I've seen this on lanes, how many are damaged out of, say, 100? Or how effective is that outer box at protecting things?
Yeah, I would say we don't get that much damage for the boxes that we're using. The gels are in like a hard plastic. They're not just a thin plastic film that can be pierced easily. So we
Mhm.
don't see that much damage. The thing that we see most often is partners maybe not putting the top PCM lid. They forget to put one of the
Mm.
gels back in,
Gotcha.
or a VIP panel is missing or something like that. That's the most common thing we see is
Mm.
just not all of the elements getting back into the box, especially if you as a healthcare worker are not paying attention to how you're unpacking it. It could be confusing to see, how did these pieces all fit back into this box? So we will reach back out to our partners if we get a box back that's missing a VIP panel or missing a gel. And we'll say, hey, is this sitting in your pharmacy somewhere? I think it didn't make it back in the box. And then, we can work with them to get that piece back. We don't run into a ton of damage, thankfully. So that is occasionally a VIP panel will be pierced or something like that. But really the biggest challenge we see is either the box is not coming back because the person who usually handles it is on vacation or something like that, or not all of the elements making it back in.
Right. And it mainly parcel shippers, not pallet shippers you're doing that with, obviously. This is
Correct.
last
Yeah,
mile.
and domestically, it's all parcel.
Yeah. Okay. It's fascinating. Okay, good. I know we're sort of getting on to our last few questions here, but I know at Logi Pharma in Lyon, you presented a focus on real-time aid delivery case study with Sensitech. Can you talk us through what that was, what the project you did with Sensitech, and what the outcomes were?
Yeah, definitely. So with Sensitech, we use them for our real-time temperature monitors. So this was an opportunity for us to kind of present to the rest of the pharma sector how real-time temperature monitoring is being used in a humanitarian context. And it really focused on how we can intervene and how real-time, I think it's been the biggest thing that has improved and impacted at least the humanitarian pharma supply chain in the past 5, 6 years. Like that has been the biggest change and improvement since I've started working in this space is being able to actually react and save your shipment when something is going wrong in transit. Being able to see where it's at, which airport, the airline can say, "Oh no, it's over here." And you're like, "I have visibility. I can see where it is in this airport. I can see what terminal it's at. I know that it is or is not in cold storage. If our box has been placed into a freezer, we get an alert immediately. If it's been out on the tarmac for more than 2 hours, we get an alert. So, really, having that visibility and being able to react has been the biggest improvement and change, and that's really what we explored in that presentation with Sensitech was how we're utilizing their technology and how it's kind of transforming how humanitarian supply chains work.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And just on some future outlook pieces, obviously the sort of global temperature control and medicines is growing rapidly. And what's the biggest gap in terms of humanitarian crisis from what you're what you have today to what you might need in 2 or 3 years' time to keep up with demand, or I presume improve your services?
I think the biggest thing that's changing all of our industries that's going to be affecting, humanitarian cold chain pharma as well is really how AI is going to fit into all of this. So utilizing AI, I'm sure as every company is, we're trying to figure out how, what problems are we trying to solve and how can we utilize AI to address those problems. So looking at some of our more complicated lanes and what have we done in the past, really analyzing all of the data we have. Every company has so much data, and it's
Mhm.
as long as you have it in a way that is able to be analyzed, you can use it for your benefit. So we are currently trying to figure out, we have all this information for all these shipments that we've sent over the years. How can we utilize AI to determine what the best method is to transport a shipment? I think that is one of the things the industry is kind of grappling with, right? Every
Mhm.
conference you go to, it's the hot topic, but everyone's still trying to figure out how does this work within my supply chain with my processes,
100%.
my
Yeah.
quality and that sort of thing. So I think AI is the wild card and it's going to be kind of what causes the biggest changes or maybe shifts in how we approach problems moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think the amount of information that you guys are having to deal with on a daily basis because the IoT and monitoring
Mhm,
has improved things, but it's also created this wave of information that's flowing in, and how to decipher that and get the best information out and the right information at the right time is obviously a massive challenge. AI then comes in to sort that. How do you use AI effectively and train your staff to make sure they're getting the best results out of the AI programs they're trying to use? Yeah, 100%. We're in the middle of a transition. It's a tough one for people to manage in terms of what I'm hearing on the ground. So I think we're at the start a little bit there as well.
mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Good. Well, I know we're sort of run out of time there, but so if people wanted to get hold of you or work with the organization, what's the best way of doing that? What's the best way of approaching you guys?
Yeah, anyone can, if you have questions about anything I've spoken about or direct relief in general, you can reach out directly to me at my email. Reaching out to me via email is the best. And if I'm not the person who can best answer your question, I can get you in touch with the group who would be.
Perfect. Brilliant. Well, I know your team's doing an amazing job, and thank you so much for coming on to the podcast there and sharing the insights you have. I think some of the stuff you spoken around about sort of having to handle the growth of 35% increase in output and building cold storage and delivering into humanitarian, it's so unique because typically for commercial pharma, that's not necessarily the challenge they face every day. But you're obviously so fleet of foot in terms of the approach you're taking there. It's honestly brilliant to share. I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. So you've been listening to Cold Chain Insights. My name's Thomas Hunt. Please tune in next week for our next guest, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.